world, some obstacles come and those obstacles are faced. But the specifics of the obstacles faced, they're not that important. What was the exact time at that time? So the primary focus is this, is how the Lord is interacting, what the devotee is doing, what the Lord is doing. But remember, we talked about how bhakti is both about transforming the world and transcending the world. So, if we consider that the devotee is also transforming the world, then understanding what the situation was in the world at that time, what were the specific challenges created by that situation, and how those challenges were addressed, that can be very helpful in understanding how the devotee acts in this world. It can also give us lessons about how we can act in the world. One is, you can say, be determined in your service, have faith in the Lord. But along with that, there are practical challenges that are being faced. And those practical challenges need to be addressed in practical ways. So, understanding the specifics of the situation that the acharyas lived in can help us see those particular situations in a different light, in a more, we could say, relatable perspective. So I will talk about Srila Prabhupada. So some of the details of Srila Prabhupada's life will be known to all of you, many of the details. But the way we are looking at it is, let's say, this is the world. So Prabhupada was acting in the world and the world was responding, sometimes creating obstacles, sometimes welcoming him. So now the materialistic vision is to see only this much, that person existed at that particular time and this is what that person did, this thing succeeded, that thing didn't succeed. Now, we could look at it only from the spiritual perspective, and we could say that the world is only incidental. The primary thing is that the devotee was trying to serve the Lord and the Lord blessed the devotee. And so this is a valid way of looking at it, but we could say that this is slightly, maybe this is not the best way to depict it. It's almost as if this is like this. The world is almost irrelevant. That the devotee gets some success in the world, that's almost, it's wonderful, but a more holistic way to understand this is that while the devotee is acting in the world, the devotee is acting in the world to serve the Lord. And the Lord is rewarding the devotee also through the actions in the world. So the world is not separate. It's not that the world is here and Krishna is there and we do act in the world here and we act for Krishna there. No, Krishna also is here in the world and Krishna is also acting through the world. So we will try to, so in that sense, there is a, you may have heard this, history. Seen from a bhakti view, if we see it with a bhakti world view, history is his story. History. History. So history is not just a random set of events happening. This king fought a battle over there and this political upheaval happened over there and this person was betrayed and this person was victorious. Yeah, all those are there. But beyond it, through history, Krishna is also acting. And understanding how Krishna is acting through history can help us also appreciate that God is not just far away. Now that God is here around us, He's acting in the world. Now, of course, sometimes it is easier to see with greater clarity when we have some advantage of distance. When something is directly hitting us, then to see Krishna's hand over there is a little more difficult. But nonetheless, if we understand Krishna is time, then that means Krishna is acting in this world also. 𝐂𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐍. So with this, I'll look at, depending on how much time we have in this on the next session, I'll talk about 5 or 6 key incidents. And we'll try to understand the times in that situation. So, what happened in 1896? Yes, it was the birth. So, it happened over here. So, we'll try to understand the situation in Bengal specifically and in India at that time. Then, 1922, what happened? Yes, Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, we will try to understand what was the situation at that time. Now, here, it was India, but already there was some vision of something beyond India also in that meeting. So, it's here when we look at it, primarily we'll be looking at Bengal and India. But then here, we'll start looking at this particular time, what was happening in the world at large. Then we will look at 1944. Now, I won't focus on 1944 specifically, but this was the time when the World War was going on. It was almost coming to an end. And Prabhupada, in the middle of the World War, he started back to Godhead. And he was trying to share. So we'll look at that particular incident. Then we will look at 1965. What happened in 65? Yes, Prabhupada went to America. So here I'll primarily focus on what was happening in America and the world and how Prabhupada acted over there. Then I'll look at 1970. Any idea what happened in 1970? Yes, Prabhupada came with full strength to India. He had come once in 1968 for a visit to India. But the reception that he got in India in 1970 was dramatically different. And then we'll also see in 1977. What happened at that time? That was the time when Prabhupada departed from the world. So here we'll talk more in terms of the legacy that was created and how that legacy is being continued. Okay. So let's see how many incidents we can discuss. And our point is to see, it's that sometimes when you talk of, oh, this is such a pure devotee, and pure devotee is guided by the Lord, pure devotee is so empowered. I feel, yes, he's a pure devotee, I'm not a pure devotee. So, it's what they have done, they're so great souls, I cannot do anything like that. So, it's like, sometimes there is like admiration, but it's almost like this is so high up that there's nothing I can do like this. But yes, this devotee's consciousness may be high up, but they also face problems that are there in this world. So how do they deal with those problems? That's also we'll try to discuss. So this period of 1896, this was in the middle of what was called as the Bengal Renaissance. Have any of you heard this word Renaissance before? Renaissance, what does it mean? Sorry? Okay, sorry, I can't hear you. Revolution. Revival. Okay. Dramatical change. Okay, good. Many different meanings, that's true. Renaissance. So, I was giving a class, I was asking some students in, where was I? In Banaras, have you heard the word Renaissance? So he said, yeah. One boy is, yes. He said, I've only heard the word, I don't know the meaning. So, Renaissance, actually, in Greek, essence means birth. Renaissance means it's like a new birth. So what does new birth mean? See, in that context is that you become rejuvenated. You get a new outlook. So it's basically new birth, at least in that context, means like you have a new vision and you have a new energy. Like somebody is old, like in our philosophy also, vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. That when somebody gets a new body, then they have a fresh way of looking at a different place. And also, you're young, you have energy. So the idea of Renaissance is, this is the time when there is a new way of looking at the world and there is a new energy. So, what happened was that if you look at Indian history, Bengal has had a significant place in shaping Indian history. Now, every state has its significance, but especially in modern Indian history, Bengal was the first place that the British captured. And from here, they spread their influence everywhere. So the Western educational system, that had the maximum impact in Bengal. And if you see many of the independence leaders, whether it's Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Rabindranath Tagore or Swami Vivekananda or Aurobindo Ghosh or, Subhash Chandra Bose, of course, yeah. So many of them were from Bengal. So there would, of course, Bal Gangadhar Tilak from Maharashtra and many other people were there. Not that, but there was a significant amount of change that happened over here. So there's a particular ethos at the time when Prabhupada appeared that, see, Mahaprabhu had appeared over here and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared how many years ago? So he was there from 1486 to 1524. So although 300 plus years had passed, Mahaprabhu's impact was huge. After Mahaprabhu departed, 27 biographies of him were written. And at the past, writing books was not easy. It's not like you can just type and have ChatGPT edit and the book is done. Isn't it? So it's very difficult. So the fact that so many biographies were written, that indicate that his impact was huge. So Mahaprabhu himself was being worshipped at that time. Gaur Nitai or Gaur Gadadhar, those deities were still common. That worship was there when Prabhupada grew up. So at that time, on one side, so I'll talk about Prabhupada's birth time. I'll talk about 4 different things. At that time, what was the cultural atmosphere? What was the religious atmosphere? What was the political atmosphere? And what was the intellectual or philosophical atmosphere? And then we'll see how an Acharya manifests at that particular time and what the Acharya does. So what happened was, from a religious perspective, that Mahaprabhu's worship, Mahaprabhu was like almost like a family deity. In every house, there would be singing of Mahaprabhu's glories. But, see, in every tradition, if you consider culture and philosophy. So philosophy is like science and culture is like technology. Like everyone uses mobile. But if the mobile stops working, how many people know how to fix the mobile? If the internet stops working, how many people know actually how the internet works? So at that time, you need somebody who knows the science. So like that, the philosophy is being like science is not known to many people. But the culture is like the technology. Culture is what reaches the masses. So in the culture, the worship of Mahaprabhu was there quite a bit. But in terms of philosophy, his teachings, Mahaprabhu's teachings were not known very well. In fact, 2 generations before Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was there. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to search for almost a decade to find a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mahaprabhu's stories were known, But Chaitanya Charitamrita was also a philosophical book. So that was not so easily available. So the point was that religiously, while Islamic rule was there and there was sometimes intolerance, while the British had now started taking up the rule, and relatively speaking, from the religious perspective, the British were not that intolerant. They worked in a different way. The Islamic extremists, they tried to destroy temples. But the Christian evangelicals, they were subtler. They tried to destroy the faith that made people go to temples. That is, they tried to Max Muller misinterpreted the Vedas. And it was like, oh, these books have such brilliant wisdom. However, that brilliant wisdom is like a flash of lightning. What eventually you get is an ocean of darkness. Ultimately, there is no conclusion, no clarity. There is mutual contradiction. And these books, ultimately, there are some jewels of insight, but ultimately they make no sense. They will only leave a person in confusion. So it's like there are different kinds of criticism. Sometimes it is said that you damn somebody by giving them faint praise. Sometimes somebody invites you to their home for prasad. Or we invite somebody to our home for prasad. And after prasad, they ask them, how was the prasad? They say, it was edible. Now, if you say it was that, I don't want to blame Christians alone. See, at that time in America, in UK also, there were two parties. Like always, there are two parties. Now, there was a more rationalist party, and the other was a more religious party. So, the rationalists and the religious both attacked Hinduism, but for different reasons. That this religious, they considered Hinduism has come from the devil. That it is what they call as a pagan religion. And the rationalists they attack, Hinduism is filled with so many irrational beliefs. It's pre-scientific, it is illogical. So both of them attacked, but for different reasons. So their hope or their expectation was that we will be able to get people to give up Hinduism and take up Christianity or take up rationality, whatever it is. But what happened was that many Indians started taking, not many, a few, they started taking the rational approach and more like the Christianity has some humanitarian values of survey tradition completely. So culturally, the Indians continued their practice. And always, there were some intellectuals who were influential. The masses, like the technology is there, masses, there were some people who were deviating, some people are faithfully following. That's why if you see Prabhupada's childhood, Prabhupada grew up in a home. It's almost like his home, he was not affected much. Prabhupada says, every time when I wake up, I would hear my father doing aarti and the bell sound. Then I would go and sit next to my father and help him in the worship. And Prabhupada as a small child, just 4 or 5 years old, what did he do? Sorry? Rath Yatra festival. His father was so devoted, and it was that he said that even before my hands could reach long enough to reach the two sides of a mridanga, he said my father had me to train myself to learn mridanga that will be pleasing to Radharani. So he grew up in a very devotional atmosphere. In one sense, you could say that he was insulated from what was happening in the bigger world. And then it was when he wanted to do Rath Yatra, not only his father supported him, it said the whole community came together. And they said, his father said it's a children event. No, it's not a children event. They're all doing it. So we can see the culture, whatever was happening at a bigger political level, the culture was still there. And so Prabhupada got all these impressions, not just getting the impressions, he was also expressing them. It was, while it was appreciated, everybody came and participated. But still, Prabhupada was special. It's not that every other kid wanted to do Rath Yatra. When Prabhupada took the initiative, other kids also joined in. The culture was pious, but Prabhupada was still a pioneer over there at that time also. So he had his he had a natural devotional instinct. Now we could go backwards. I'm not talking from the perspective of Prabhupada as a Mahabhagavad who descended from the spiritual world. We are talking in history how we can appreciate Srila Prabhupada. So in that culture he grew up. But then the way the trajectory went, that at that time, see, for the first 1 century, 1757 was when the Battle of Plassey happened. The British won the first war over here. So for the first 100 years or so, they used different strategies for trying to do evangelical preaching. Initially, it was like directly criticize Hinduism and make people see how foolish you are to believe in all these crazy things. But when they realized that is not working, then they changed strategy. They said, we are here for the long haul. So they started going into 3 things: social service, like education, poverty relief, and hospitals. And through that, it was very subtle. And what happened was that there was a traditional Gurukul system, which was very much there. But the challenge was that there was no forum for those who would go to the Gurukul to eventually have some jobs. While some people wanted some priests. But it's not everybody is a Brahmana who is going to become a priest. So what happened at that time, the British, they also disrupted significantly the economic system at that time. I won't go into that history, that how they disrupted the economic system. But the result of that was that the main source of like a steady, respectable livelihood was employment in the British government. Like even if you see even 20 years before, it's not so much now, but if you see your parents or grandparents' generation, if you get a government job, then you're settled for life. Isn't it? That's the ethos. Now many people say, I don't want to settle for life. Isn't it? I want to have ambitions, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's the values of change. And now, see, in the past, if somebody is jobless, they feel embarrassed, I lost my job, unemployed. At least in America, I've seen, and in some circles in India, also see people just very nonchalantly say, I am between jobs. They don't say I'm jobless. Okay, I had one job, I given up that job, I'm exploring what next job I want to do. But it was not like that at that time. It was that if somebody gets a government job or has a government education, so many doors open, like a Christian education in the Christian. So to get the government jobs, there were the schools which were run by the Christians. And they were the best schools and colleges at that time. So Prabhupada's father sent him to Scottish Church College. And this was the first time, in one sense, Prabhupada was exposed in a very forceful way to the bigger world. 2 things happened. One was the Christian, this was a evangelical school. See, among Christians there are Catholics and Protestants. So mostly it is the Protestants who were Britain was a Protestant country. So most of the people who came to India were Protestants. Afterward the Catholic Church also came. But most of the people who came were Protestants. So what happened was that this was the place where Prabhupada got exposed to the critiques of dharma. So not only that, it was also a hotbed of political activity. The same school that Prabhupada studied in, Subhash Chandra Bose also studied in the same college. He studied a few years before Prabhupada. But either way, it was a political hotbed at that time. So now Prabhupada, although he heard all these critiques from the Christian perspective of the Vedic path, his faith was never disturbed. But Prabhupada was also strategic. That it was when his professor criticized the philosophy of karma, he said, there is no witness. And that's why this whole philosophy of karma is arbitrary. That in any system, like say if you are working in a job and you are fired from the job, then you need to be told, okay, what did I do wrong? You need to be given an opportunity to explain your side of the story. And then, after that, if that is not satisfactory, then you can be fired. So if somebody just arbitrarily fired and they say, okay, who said what? Why is this firing done? There's no information given. There is no witness for the crime. You're just declared to be a criminal and you are punished. Then that is unreasonable. So their criticism was that if we are all suffering because of our karma, it's completely arbitrary. No one knows what wrong they have done. No one tells them what wrong they have done. No one knows who has seen you doing the wrongs. So it's a completely arbitrary system. And their criticism went further. They said that it is because Hindus have this belief in this philosophy of karma, that is why Hindus are so uncompassionate. So if somebody is poor and starving on the streets, Hindus believe this person is starving because of their karma. And that's why they let them starve. But he says, our Jesus, he says, we are not meant to judge people. That Jesus is a God of love. He teaches everyone that if there is hungry, if you're feeding a hungry person, you are feeding me through that hungry person. If you're caring for a tired person, you're caring for me. It is I who am coming to your house as the tired person. So they try to contrast from a rational and moral perspective. Now Prabhupada grew in a traditional society. And in a traditional society, normally we respect our teachers. So Prabhupada did not fight back at that time. But Prabhupada was preparing. He was preparing. Okay, these are the arguments. If you see, whenever Prabhupada responds to Christianity, he addresses Christianity, that how is he addressing that? Because, he studied Christian philosophy. That was a part of his college syllabus. He studied that. And he addresses many of those points in his books. So, Prabhupada also shows we have to choose our battles. Prabhupada could have argued with this professor over there, he would have been thrown out of his college. And what would be the result of that? We choose our battles. Now, so what is happening is, if we go back to these four things, politically, India was now seeking independence. So what happened is that the British education, in that only they said how, Britain has the idea of democracy. And the Indians said, in your books you are telling us that you are so special because you have a democratic form of government. But you are not giving us democracy. So walk your talk. So it was that the British education itself, it was used by Indians to challenge the Britishers. So what happened over a period of time was, many young educated Indians started looking towards independence. And initially, it was like the spiritual struggle and the political struggle were very closely related. In the sense that many people thought that India's spirituality will not be expressed till India has political freedom. Nobody will listen to a country that is a slave to some other country. That's why they thought that we have to get independence first. And Prabhupada also had this view. See, Prabhupada grew up in a very very devotional atmosphere. And his personal devotional convictions were never shaken. But he felt that actually we need independence first. And that was what he said when he met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So what happened is, we might just hear Prabhupada was the follower of Gandhi. To some extent he was. Actually Gandhiji was his influence was also just slowly rising. In 1920, Gandhiji was like a new entrant into the Indian political scene. He was earlier in South Africa. Then he came back to India. And because he had stood up against the British there, so he was welcomed in India as an influential person. But he became really influential in 1930s, 1940s. But at that time there was a non-cooperation movement. So when Prabhupada was wearing khadi. Now, it's like we have to be at that culture. So, like say, if somebody wears a particular dress, say something like a Nehru cap or something like a Modi jacket or whatever they call it. When you wear a particular dress, it's not just a fashion style, it's a political statement. Like in America, Trump's party is called the MAGA, Make America Great Again. So people wear this MAGA hat. And they written that, so it's not, that hat is not just like a cap choice. It's a political statement. So when Prabhupada chose to wear khadi, it was not just a clothing choice. It was a political statement that he was making. So the point here we understand is that Prabhupada at that time also had a strong courage of conviction. If I believe something, I will stand up for it. So sometimes we forget this, that at that time Gandhi started the non-cooperation movement. And Prabhupada, can you imagine somebody completes education, passes the exam, but chooses to not go and get the degree. Many other people did it at that time, but still for doing that requires courage. Courage of conviction. So it's that now there are people in the world who have courage of conviction. The question is, what is the conviction that they have? Their conviction can be from some mundane cause. Their conviction can be for some divine cause. So in 1922, when he met Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, now that was a turning point. Now this was the time India had like three main phases. There's the non-cooperation movement 1920s, there's the civil disobedience movement 1930s, and the Quit India movement 1940s. So this 1922, this first movement, the non-cooperation movement, it was just moving towards its peak. So at that time, Prabhupada met Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. And I won't go into the specifics of the meeting. You all know what happened. But the key thing here is that, see, many times people, it's like sometimes we hear classes and we share philosophy with others. We may think, okay, what the world is going in one direction. There is political violence here. There is religious sectarianism there. There is this over there. What is philosophy going to do? But ideas have impact. Ideas have consequences. And one sign of intelligence is to recognize the power of ideas, the power of thoughts, the power of worldviews. So it was just one meeting, but that one meeting changed the direction of Srila Prabhupada's life. In one sense, he was going on the pathway of the political struggle for independence. Now, for many of them, the political struggle was also a spiritual struggle. But it was first a political struggle and later a spiritual struggle. So what Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur told him is, the spiritual struggle is much more important. That who is ruling, it makes a difference, but it does not make that much of a difference. Ultimately, there has to be a change of consciousness. And we will see when we talk about 1944 and the independence struggle, how Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's words came out to be true. So, now here, there are basically 3 points that Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur made. That who rules politically? Now that is not very important. Now why is that not very important? In general, change can happen in two ways. One is top down and the other is bottom up. So top down is the idea that there is a powerful king, a powerful leader, a powerful savior comes up. And that person changes everything. That's the top-down approach. The bottom-up approach is that at the grassroots levels, individuals change their consciousness. Individuals rise up. So later on when Prabhupada was asked that how will Krishna consciousness spread across the world? So Prabhupada talked about both ways. Prabhupada said that it's possible that some head of state may become Krishna conscious. And if that happens, then the whole state can become Krishna conscious. But Prabhupada focused primarily on the bottom-up change. So this is actually goes much deeper to some religious psychology over here. See, what happens is that somehow in religious traditions, this is more in the Christian tradition, but it came in the Vedic tradition also. In the Christian tradition, there is that idea of a Messiah. So basically Moses came and he was supposed to be a prophet. And Moses said a future another prophet is going to come. So when Jesus came, some of the Jews, they accepted that Jesus is that prophet. So they became Christians. Others didn't accept. So they say we are still waiting for that prophet to come. Then after that Muhammad came and some people accepted Muhammad as that prophet. So they became Muslims. And Muhammad saw that, this next after future prophets will keep coming. So Muhammad said, I am the seal of all prophets. There will be no prophets after me. So if you accept me, you will be saved. Otherwise you are doomed. Then Muhammad was asked that, but Jesus said he is going to come again. Yes, he will come and he will reveal that I am the chosen prophet. And he will reward those who accept me before he comes. But if you accept him at that time, he will punish you. So basically he spun the whole theory in their own way. But the point is that in the Abrahamic traditions, to some extent, and I don't want to generalize, the idea is that some great figure will come and that figure will fix things. But this is not the approach of the Vedic tradition. See, Krishna, when he speaks the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sambhavami yuge yuge, that I come again and again. But Krishna is not telling Arjuna, I am the avatar, I will fix everything. Krishna is telling, I am the avatar, I am behind you, you take up responsibility. Tasmat tamuttishta yasho labhasva. You arise and you fight, and I will empower you. So now, of course, we can say Arjuna is already a leader, and there's truth to that. But the point is, Krishna is not saying, I am going to do everything. You do things, and I will back you. So it's, you could say that this is a top-down approach because Arjuna is a Kshatriya. But it's not a top-down approach in the sense that it's not that God is making the change and you just have to sit and watch. Arjuna has to take up weapons. So when here Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur is telling Prabhupada, what is he actually saying? He's saying that if you wait for political change, that is more like a top-down change. He says top-down change will not work unless there is a bottom-up change. So focus on sharing Krishna consciousness directly. For us, sharing Krishna consciousness is not just so that we can get liberated and we can go back to Godhead. We also want to change the world. But it is a bottom-up approach. So Prabhupada was very inspired by this vision. And from that time onwards, although he was a Grahastha, he worked very hard to try to, the astrologer had told him that you can be very wealthy. And he thought that I'll support my Guru Maharaj's mission. And he tried that for almost 2.5 decades. He just gave himself to his business. And see, sometimes we say Prabhupada was empowered. And yes, he was empowered. But empowered does not mean absence of obstacles or reversals. That's not what it means. It actually means persistence amid obstacles and reversals. Obstacles and reversals. See, you may have seen that old Ramayana where, the Ram is fighting with some asuras and the asura shoots an arrow and then Ram shoots an arrow and both the arrows collide in mid-air and both the arrows they're hitting. And then the asura's arrow falls. And then Ram's arrow keeps moving forward. And the asura gets scared. What happened? How did this arrow fall? What happened to this arrow? I thought it was a powerful arrow. So, although it is Ram and Ram's arrow, but still there is opposition. But the opposition falls by the side. So like that, for a devotee, also there is opposition in the world. Empowered does not mean there are no obstacles. The obstacles are there and sometimes the obstacles can be formidable. But there is persistence amid the obstacles also. So Prabhupada kept persisting. Now, in 1944, so I'll talk about a couple of points here. So he kept trying, but somehow it didn't work. Now Prabhupada worked very hard. See, where was Prabhupada born and brought up? Where was Prabhupada born and brought up? Kolkata. Now from Kolkata, he shifted to Mumbai. And he had a business in Mumbai. From Mumbai, he went to Prayag. He had a business over there. Now, at that time, people relocating so much. If they had a government job, they would relocate. But without a government job, for your own business, to relocate is not so easy. To go to a different place and start a business, learn the language of that place, learn the culture of that place, and then try to start a business over there. Prabhupada did that because for him the business was not just a source of livelihood. It was the means of service for him. But somehow it just didn't work. Various things went wrong. Sometimes one of his assistants, he made a big mistake and their godown was burnt with all the clothes, all the supply that they had. Other point, one of his servants just betrayed him and robbed everything and went away. Other place, they had a shop, but the clientele just nobody was coming over there. So various things went wrong. And Prabhupada didn't give up hope. It's like a devotee when the Ganga is moving toward the ocean. What happens is, sometimes when the Ganga is going, there is an obstacle. So if there is an obstacle, then the Ganga sometimes goes left, right, it goes below, it goes above, or it just pierces through it, just pushing on and eroding it gradually. So there are two things. There is the purpose and there is the path. So we need to be fixed in purpose and flexible in path. The Ganga is fixed in the purpose of going toward the ocean, but is flexible in terms of how it goes toward the ocean. So what happened was that when the business didn't work out, slowly Prabhupada decided to try other things. He still continue his business by the side, but if you go into that history, that he tried 6 different things, and each of these he put his sweat and toil into each of those things. And he started running the Back to Godhead magazine. And it was extremely difficult. Now we might just hear running a magazine. Nowadays, if you want to do a magazine, you just type something, put it on online. People want to print it out, take it, print it out. Otherwise, there's no worry about distribution. See, in the 1940s, the World War was going on. And as it is, supplies were in very great shortage. And now slowly it's more and more coming out that Bengal, there was a devastating famine. And that was actually, to a large extent, caused by the British. So basically what happened, that Japan was attacking and Bengal is on the east coast of Japan. So have any of you heard of this thing called scorched earth policy? Anyone heard of this scorched earth policy? Okay, are any of you are like, okay, you know, what is it? Who is destroying? Yes, true. Okay, good. So the idea is, of course, the scorched earth policy was not good. It was terrible. But basically what happens is that if the enemy is advancing, now the enemy needs supplies. They need food, they need grains, they need water. So now if they're advancing, they have to get the supply from their chains. Or they have to get it locally. If they can get it locally, then they can keep advancing. If they don't, then from their government only has to arrange it all. The scorched earth policy is basically what? That if an army is withdrawing, the army destroys everything that could be possible resources for the advancing army. So the army burns all the crops, the army poisons the water, so that the advancing army will not be able to get it. But the result of this is what? The people who are residing over there, they have to starve. They just, because that is their livelihood, that is their farms. It's a very brutal thing to do. And not only that, not only did the Britain follow the scorched earth policy, but on top of that, they also, naturally there was a famine in that year. And there was no proper rains and there was no proper grains. And Britain had like ships which were going from Britain to Australia, Australia to Britain. India was on the way. And there was the Indian Viceroy Attlee. He told Churchill, he sent a telegram, people are dying on the streets of India. Just falling down and dying. He says, please let these ships stop here and give some grains. And Churchill, who is supposed to be considered the greatest politician of UK in the last century, he just wrote back, if people are dying, then why is that naked beggar Gandhi still alive? Let me know after he has fallen dead. So he was completely heartless. And it was this atmosphere. And as Indians were becoming more and more rebellious, so there was no paper available. Because what happens is, paper is there. Their fear was that paper would be used for printing insurrectionist material. That the Indian political leaders will get the paper and they will use it to do propaganda against the British government. So getting paper was very difficult. And it was in this surcharged atmosphere that Prabhupada started the Back to Godhead magazine. That now was political change required? Yes, it was required, no doubt. But Prabhupada had that courage of conviction that what we need is a rising of human consciousness. Now what the British did was terrible. But as Prabhupada predicted, if you read his articles at that time, in the first Back to Godhead, he's commenting on contemporary issues. And you can see Prabhupada's conviction as well as compassion coming out. It says India was filled with hope that political change will bring about a new era in India's history. But unfortunately, what was supposed to be a dream turned out to be a nightmare. Because what happened was India was partitioned. And now, again, the statistics vary. But in the World War, about 45 million people were killed. And in the Indian partition itself, between 5 million to 10 million people were killed. And that's the count which is officially available. How much more it was, nobody knows. And then, so basically, India chose to become secular. So when India chose to become secular, the idea was religion is the cause of violence. So we will get religion out of society. And India chose to align with the USSR at that time. And then in 1950, Gandhiji was assassinated. Now, the person who assassinated Gandhi, he was seen as a Hindu extremist. And because of that, the government said that actually Hinduism is the biggest enemy for India. And so while secularism was adopted as a value, the government started especially targeting Hinduism. This is, the more Indians become Hindus, the more they will attack the politicians. And therefore, there's no other country in the world where that old country's tradition is sidelined and rewritten in the name of secularism. Secularism should mean what? That neutrality towards religion. But this became, it's like secularism, there's a toxic blend of secularism and communism. So communism is basically hatred towards God. Secularism is apathy towards religion. And there's democracy. Democracy is the rule of the majority. But when communism and democracy come together, they say what happens is that anybody who's in communism, the idea is there's the powerful and the powerless. There are the victimizers and the victims. So traditionally there were the wealthy and the poor, the haves and the have-nots. But when communism gets mixed with democracy, they say whoever is in majority, the majority has power and the minority is exploited. So therefore, communism always supports the minority. Because the majority are powerful, the minority are weak. And therefore, what happened was like a complete reverse discrimination against the majority religion happened. And That's how it happened that a lot of Indians, especially in the 1970s onwards, as soon as America started liberalizing, Indians started leaving America, leaving India to go to America. Now Indians are the wealthiest minority in America, and Indians are very widely respected and envied in America because they are so wealthy, so well-to-do. But anyway, how that was Krishna's plan was playing out there also we'll see. But in this turbulent atmosphere, so what Prabhupada saw was that, political changes never work out the way we think they will. That the idea was, after independence, as I said, for many of these leaders, political change was meant to be the means for bringing about spiritual change. The political change came out and a spiritual change also came. But the spiritual change was not toward Indian spirituality, it was completely away from Indian spirituality. So that's why, now, does material change is required? Yes, if it can be done, it is good. But banking too much on it can be a huge problem. So Prabhupada, he focused on back to Godhead. He tried 6 things. He tried back to Godhead, but it just, at that time, Prabhupada was speaking in English. He was writing in English. And how many people actually understood English at that time? And those people who understood English, they were very much indoctrinated by political hope or communist fantasy, and they're just not interested in spirituality. Then Prabhupada tried to start an organization, League of Devotees in Jhansi. That didn't work out. The very people who were supporting him turned against him. Prabhupada tried to work with his god brothers in their ashram, and they just tried to keep him in a very constricted role, not giving him any facility to do any service significantly. Then he was inspired by his Guru Maharaj. He came in his dream and said, you take sannyas. He wrote to his god brother and he said, what qualification do you have to take sannyas? No, you have been attached householder throughout your life. First you come and stay in our ashram. Show your credentials. After a testing period of 5 or 10 years, then if you are found qualified, then we'll give you sannyas. Now Prabhupada said, I don't have time like this. Prabhupada was burning with compassion. Then he wrote to another god brother and he said, yes, of course you should take sannyas. Just come, we will give you sannyas. So his god brother also, Keshav Maharaj, saw that he's very special. So normally, like in a sannyas ceremony, the guru gives the speech and the disciple hears. But here Keshav Maharaj told Prabhupada to speak. Keshav Maharaj spoke, but he asked Prabhupada also to speak. That also happened here in Kolkata only. Sorry, it happened in Mathura. So anyway, so then Prabhupada was preparing. And Prabhupada wrote Bhagavatam. And this was a significant contribution. And it was enormous efforts to write. See, basically at this time, Prabhupada was trying whatever he could. He would go and wherever he would get an opportunity to speak, he would speak. And people were pious, respectful. If a Swami comes to their home, they would open their home, they would give a place to stay, and they would hear. But none of them were like very serious. See, it was like hearing Bhagavatam Katha was like a part of Indian piety. So when Sumti Moraji, we'll come to that instead of how he went to America. So nobody was seriously interested. He wrote the Bhagavatam and he had to work very hard to actually write. It took him 1 year he had the manuscript ready, but he had no resources. The printing, there's an interview of the printer who actually printed the Bhagavatam. He said when Swamiji would bring the manuscript, many times the manuscript, how it was, that actually, when somebody writes a letter, at that time people write physical letters, not emails or not social media DMs. But, so he said when somebody would write a letter, they would put in the envelope. So Prabhupada would actually take out the envelope, like unwind it, and then it would become a blank paper. And because paper was also expensive, and he would write his Bhagavatam commentary on that paper. So when he would bring it to be typed, sometimes he would type it, when he would ask somebody else to get to their place to type it. So the manuscript, original manuscript was basically what? It is like the backside or the inside of an envelope on which he had written on which he had typed his galley proofs. So Prabhupada worked extremely hard. And finally he got the 3 volumes of the Bhagavatam. But then, because he was the first person to have translated the Bhagavatam into English with a commentary. So the books was sent to the Prime Minister of India, the President of India. The President of India at that time gave some endorsement. The Prime Minister of India was Lal Bahadur Shastri. He also gave some endorsements. And he said that all libraries in India should have this is invaluable books. So it was something significant. But then Prabhupada noticed that people would appreciate, oh, very good, your Swamiji, you have written a book. But after that, nothing was happening. Like the books might go into the libraries, but libraries have so many books. And who will actually read the book? So while Prabhupada had the books, Prabhupada realized with the books alone, things are not moving forward. So what happened was that India at that time, 3 things. The Prabhupada had tried so much till 1965, we can say. Now, politically, there was a lot of political hope, you could say, that as the politics changes, things will become better. But that was not happening. Either India was politically filled with some hope, India was culturally, there was enamored by the West. The political hope was that the government will change things. And it's interesting how India was like a very complex mix at that time. See that although the government adopted communism, that never became the dream of the masses. It is not that Indians dreamt, oh, I'll go to Moscow and I'll get education in Moscow, I'll get a job in Moscow. That was never the part of Indian dreams. Indian dreams was, I'll go to UK or I'll go to America. So, while the government did this, so government was not at all religious. It was completely opposite to religion, especially the mainstream religion. Then the people in general were very infatuated by the West. Because what happened was, most of USSR was behind the Iron Curtain. So its progress was not so much seen. The West technological and the progress was seen. And then financially or economically, much of India was crippled by poverty. So, there are of course wealthy people, but those pious people who were there, many of them were, Prabhupada was speaking in English, many of them had their own gurus and their teachers in their local languages. So Prabhupada was just not getting any success. And then, it's amazing that the Prabhupada writes in his 7th canto Bhagavatam, that intelligence means to understand what is the purpose of life amid a life full of problems. There are many problems. So now Prabhupada had been trying to do outreach, it was not successful. Prabhupada could have thought about, okay, why is this not successful? He could have come up with many reasons. He could have thought, okay, I'm preaching in English, maybe English is not working, so I should preach in Hindi or Bengali. Prabhupada could have said, okay, I'm teaching philosophy, maybe I should shift to kathas. People like kathas. See, Indians were still pious. Indians were interested in, you could say, more of sentimental religion, not philosophical spirituality. So the Bhagavad Kathas would go on. But Prabhupada didn't think about it. Prabhupada didn't say that. What did Prabhupada say? That he focused that Indians are enamored by the West. So he said, let me go to the West. Let me preach to people in the West. And then they will come. If they come to India, then Indians see them. Then what will happen is, they will take it up. Now if you look at this, it is like, if you consider Indians so neglectful of spirituality, that is Maya. Okay? Then enamored means captivated, attracted, captivated by the West. This is also Maya. So what is Prabhupada doing here? Prabhupada is planning to use one Maya to counter another Maya. Isn't it? is the infatuation with the West. The infatuation with the white skin or the Western people, whatever it is, that is Maya. So the Bhagavatam says, if a thorn has gone into the leg, what do you need to do? Use another thorn to take out the first thorn. So this is Prabhupada's expertise. But the sheer amount of courage and ambition required to even think of this. Sumti Moraji was his sponsor. She said, Swamiji, if you want to speak the Bhagavatam, you come to my home, you stay in my home. Every evening I'll hear Bhagavatam from you. So, now Prabhupada didn't want to speak Bhagavatam as a ritual. Prabhupada wanted to have an impact. He wanted people who would mold their life according to teaching of the Bhagavatam. See, what happens is, at this time, religion can be a spiritual transformer, or it can be a cultural cosmetic. You know what is a cosmetic? What is a cosmetic? Yeah, something which you wear to look better, to look good. So religion for many people is a cultural cosmetic. So like now Durga Puja is going on. So now many people, hundreds and thousands of people participate in Durga Puja. But how many people are actually interested in Durga Devi? Sometimes even the songs are not about Durga Devi. Maybe for 10-15 minutes there will be some song about Durga Devi. And after that there are movie songs and there are this and that. I was just yesterday, one devotee sent me. They have all kinds of Durga Puja festivals are centered on various themes. Like poverty alleviation or equality. Or one devotee sent me, there's a Durga Puja festival centered on the theme of LGBTQ rights. Now what has that got to do with Durga Puja? So, it's like, okay, Durga Puja is a cultural cosmetic. It makes me feel good. Being an LGBTQ activist is also a cultural cosmetic. So bring these two cosmetics together. So the idea is that for many people, religion is a cultural cosmetic. Now, it's not a bad thing entirely. Because, okay, to feel good or to look good in society, at least for that you go to a temple, you do some religious activity, that's good. At least for that you are doing a religious activity. Yena kena prakarena. But that's definitely not the best motive. And so, for many people hearing Bhagavad Katha, it's like a sattvic form of entertainment. Maybe watching Bollywood movies is rajasic or tamasic form of entertainment. And hearing some nice katha, that is sattvic form of entertainment. So, Prabhupada was not interested in that. And so Prabhupada was very clear, very courageous. So then, it's like how Prabhupada actually was able to go to America. It happened here only from Kolkata itself. It is generally, if you want to go to a different country, there are three things that are required. First is that you have to have somebody from that country sponsor you. That is, if you are going to an education, then the college has to say, we have admitted the students. If you are going for a company is going to hire you, the company has to give you a sponsor, or a relative has to be a sponsor. So first is you need a sponsor. Then, second is that you need the money. Money to actually go on the trip, and money also when you enter over there, because the US government is also concerned, you should not become a burden on us. So they want to know whether you have money to spend over there. Because you are a tourist, you should spend money and we'll get your money. That is their idea. So second is you need to have money. And even after you have money, you need logistics. That, okay, how exactly am I going to go? Am I going to go alone? Am I going to go with someone else? Logistics arrangement is not easy. So, now Prabhupada, it was not just his desire. Prabhupada, his Guru Maharaj also told him, the first instruction was, preach in English. You are good at English, preach in English. And preach to the Western world. That was more or less the last instruction also. So Prabhupada had tried various things. Said, what my Guru Maharaj told me, let me just focus on that. So he was trying. And whoever he would meet, he would tell them that, my Guru Maharaj has told me that I should go in the West. I'm trying to go to the West. And many people would say, yeah, I have some relative, I'll arrange something for you. And, many people talk. Nobody does anything. So actually the first thing how it worked out, it was at that time, Prabhupada had no fixed place for staying. He would stay at different places. So when Prabhupada got the sponsorship letter, that letter had actually been forwarded 6 times. So we have to thank the Indian postal system. That means, forwarded means what? You go to, it is meant to a particular address, but that person has changed their home. So they put a forwarding address, please forward the letter over here. And then that person goes over there, I'm not staying here, forward it over here. So it was forwarded 6 times. And this Mr. Agarwal, who had sponsored, Prabhupada didn't even know him very well. And he was just like among many other people. Yeah, I'll do something. I have a son over there. He will do it. Now, actually, he had asked his son to do it. So, and he had arranged a letter as a formality. And what happened is, at that time, from India to go to America, now you can go by flight. It is very easy. Now you can reach there in 25-26 hours if you have a direct flight. Indirect flight is 30-36 hours. But there going would take more than 36 days. On a ship, it is not easy. So even after somebody would get a sponsorship, many people would not go. So, this Gopal Agarwal, he, just to satisfy his father, he gave the sponsorship letter. And then the sponsorship letter somehow came to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was very surprised. He said, this is wonderful. But then, okay, how do I arrange the logistics? How do I get the money? So Prabhupada practically had no money. But then he went to Sumti Moraji. And he knew that she had a steamship. She had a shipping company. And then he went to meet her. And she would just not meet him. So in India, what happens is that there's a difference between Indian culture and Western culture. In the West, if somebody doesn't want to do something, they'll just say no. Indians, they will find various ways to not say no and hope that you will understand it is a no. So the idea is that saying no is impolite. But leaving the person hanging, that is also more troublesome, isn't it? Okay, but it's no, okay, I'll move forward, I'll do something else. So Sumti Moraji didn't want to say no, but she didn't want to say yes. So Prabhupada spent hours outside her office just waiting. And he would meet a secretary and he say, okay, so she's busy now. Prabhupada came the next day. Prabhupada said, no, I'm not going till you meet her. And then said, Swamiji, we have a small office. We have guests coming in. You cannot sit here. So Prabhupada said, I'll go outside. I'll sit on the stairs. And then all day he was sitting on her stairs. And then finally she came out of her office and said, hey, Swamiji, why is he sitting outside over here? So then he said, she came to Prabhupada. He said, Prabhupada, I've been sitting all day. All day? You didn't tell me? So then the secretary said, you have to go for a meeting. Swamiji, please come tomorrow. I'll meet you. So then next day he came. He said, Swamiji, he said that my secretary, he's telling me that, Swamiji, you are so old and America is so cold. And it is not a small thing, America being cold. If you go from India, the coldness of America is shocking. I think I mentioned the other day about, you remember, minus 11 degrees. So it's crazy how cold it is. So, and especially for an old person, it's not easy. He says, Swamiji, they're telling that if you go to America, you will die. And it was a reasonable concern. It was 1965. So Prabhupada was 69 years old. And Prabhupada had not even gone anywhere out of India. So for him to go to America all alone, it was clear to her there was nobody with him. She said, Swamiji, I cannot do this. You are like a father to me. See, in India, the culture is there that any elder person, we will call them like uncle or father. So, in the Western people, they just don't understand this. I have a brother who is settled in America now. He works in Detroit. So he looks very different from me. So he had come to meet me in the Detroit temple, and I was talking with some Indian devotees and some American devotees. So he was talking, and then one Indian devotee, after he left, "Is he your real brother?" He asked me. Then the American devotee looked at me. "Do you Indians have imaginary brothers also?" So the idea of real brother, it makes no sense to them. Like you say, "What is your good name?" Do you mean I have to have a bad name also? So anyway, so she said, "Swamiji, you are like my father. I cannot send my father to death." And then Prabhupada, became very grave. And Prabhupada then took that same angle. And Prabhupada said that if you really think of me as your father, then will you not fulfill this last desire of your father? That this is what my Guru Maharaj wanted me to do. This is what I live for. And this is what I am ready to die for. Will you not fulfill this last desire? And then she was very moved by Prabhupada's earnestness. And then she said, "Swamiji, I'll arrange for it." And then that was the time. Now before Prabhupada, there had been other spiritual teachers who had gone. And so Prabhupada was not the first person. But in 3 ways, Prabhupada was different. First was, Prabhupada was the first bhakti teacher. Most of the others were Advaitic teachers. They were more teaching about Mayavad and things like that. Second was, Prabhupada was the first person who went in such an advanced stage. Everybody else who had gone their 20s, 30s, 40s. So above 60, above 65, it's very difficult. And third was that nobody else had a journey as troubling as Prabhupada had. Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks along the way. And a heart attack is not a small thing. It can completely, even if a person survives, just a person breaks apart. So when Prabhupada climbed up on the steps of Jaladuta, it was an act of immense courage. That it was, you could say, conviction was there. This is my Guru Maharaj's mission, so I will do it. But also there was great courage that this is what I am going to do. And when he went there, he had nothing. The depth of his Krishna consciousness is such that, he had taken some food with him. Now, at that time in America, vegetarian food was unknown. I saw one cartoon where one person asked another person, "Are you a vegetarian?" He said, "No, I'm an American." So, the idea is if you're American, you obviously eat meat. So, that the idea at that time was if you have to be a vegetarian, you just have to eat vegetables for the rest of your life. They had no idea of cooking any kind of vegetarian food. So, Prabhupada didn't know whether he would get vegetarian food. What to speak of after going abroad, even on the ship. So he took some vegetarian food with him. He didn't have much money. How much money did he have? 40 rupees. And the 40 rupees was also useless. Why? Because at that time there are practically no Indians in America. We'll talk about the American situation when we talk in the next part later. But there are hardly any Indians in America, because India had also aligned with USSR. And India had very little economic exchanges with America. And if you see 1965, India had 3-4 major wars. There's a war with China, and there was a war with Pakistan, and then again there was a war over Bangladesh. So now in all these wars, it was, at least not in China war so much, but China also, but mainly with the Pakistan wars, it was America had sided with Pakistan. So because of that also, the India-America relationship was very less. And so, even if Prabhupada had the 40 rupees, he couldn't convert into American dollars. Because there was nobody to convert at that time. So actually, Prabhupada had those 40 rupees in 1968 when he came back to India. And he landed at the airport. From there, he took a rickshaw to go to the Delhi. There, he used those 40 rupees for that rickshaw. So, he didn't even use that money at all. It is just there with him. But when he came to America, or he was on his way to America, at that time, the Sumti Moraji had arranged, she had told Captain Pandya that you please make sure that Swamiji, there's abundant vegetables and grains are there for him. So grains they would have, but he got lots of vegetables. And Prabhupada would keep a journal. Prabhupada writes in journal, my thanks to Lord Krishna for having enlightened Sumti Moraji from within her heart to make all these nice arrangements. So he's conscious of her as a human agent, he's also conscious of Krishna. And then, now he started getting seasickness. Now, seasickness is not at all pleasant. See, at least when you're going in a plane, the plane moves relatively steadily. Sometimes there is turbulence, but otherwise it's fairly steady. But ship is constant up and down, up and down, up and down. So people who travel initially, when we go for a boating ride, it's for a few minutes, maybe an hour or two. But in the ship for hours, seasickness is a miserable thing. So Prabhupada got seasickness and then he got heart attack. One heart attack, second heart attack. And there was nothing that he could do. Because this was a cargo ship. Cargo ship means there are no doctors over there. No passengers are meant to be there on a cargo ship. Like cargo ship basically means like in India you have this malgadi, passenger train. It's not a passenger train, it's a goods train. Now in a goods train there might be some small cabin where the staff might travel. But in a goods train there's nothing else. So this was like that. So Prabhupada had a cabin in which he was there and he was told nobody to treat him. And then the second night when the heart attack came, he somehow survived it. And he prayed to Krishna. Krishna, if you want me to do your mission, please, you have to take care. I don't think my body can sustain a third attack. And then Krishna came in a dream. Krishna said, I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of everything. You just go and preach. And then this Captain Pandya, his wife told him, Captain Pandya and the wife, they told him, they crossed the Atlantic. He says, we have been going across the Atlantic for 40 years. He said that never before was the Atlantic so calm. So she says, Prabhupada said, Krishna has taken charge of this ship. And Captain Pandya said, Swamiji, you come back with us, again our ship journey will be very smooth. So Prabhupada said, Krishna did not arrange the Atlantic to be calm so that I would come back. I have a bigger mission. So Prabhupada survived that, and then when he came to America, Prabhupada had he landed in America, he didn't know whether I should turn left or turn right. That was the level of uncertainty that he had. So for him, at one level, it was an act of great courage in coming to America. I'll talk about this theme in our next class now. See how faith is a combination of certainty and uncertainty. Prabhupada says that he has complete confidence. Krishna, you have some plan for me. Boro krupa koile Krishna, adhamera prati. That ki lagya ane lehta koro ebe gati. Krishna, you have been very merciful to me. Now somebody may say, what is the mercy? He has no money, he has no followers, he has no institutional backing. He's all alone, completely in a foreign land. He doesn't know whether to go to left or right. His only resource was his body, and that is also recovering from a serious sickness. So what is the mercy? And he's saying, "You Krishna, you've been very merciful to me." So the mercy, we can look at it in two terms. If we consider mercy as the facility, so Prabhupada had no facilities at all. But if we can consider mercy as the opportunity. So he says that at last, at the end of my life, I have an opportunity to serve. I have an opportunity to fulfill my instruction of my spiritual master. And for that, I am grateful. So we can look at what is right in our life and what is wrong in our life. People often talk about positive thinking. But this is positive thinking in the domain of bhakti. Somebody can say, where is Krishna's mercy? I have got so much trouble. But Prabhupada is saying Krishna's mercy, through all this trouble, at least I have the opportunity to serve. So, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. So, from the time when Prabhupada appeared in 1896 till he went to America in 1965 at the age of 69. In many ways, what Prabhupada had was setback after setback, obstacle after obstacle, reversal after reversal. But in spite of that, what is Prabhupada's mood? Boro krupa koile Krishna. Krishna, you are so merciful to me. Somebody else would say, Krishna, no, you have tested me enough now, stop it now. How much more are you going to test me? But that is a devotee's consciousness. That even if I have the opportunity, now that opportunity was going to bring a whole universe of challenges. And how Prabhupada navigated the challenge and how he actually spearheaded an entire spiritual movement. That's an extraordinarily adventurous story. And especially how he came back to India and how he reshaped India and India's trajectory. That we'll discuss in our second session. But here, understanding the background, understanding the challenges that he faced, that helps us appreciate that while it was a divine plan, at the same time, there is a human struggle. And it was not that Prabhupada knew what the divine plan was. We'll talk about that certainty and uncertainty more. Prabhupada is certain Krishna has some plan, that's why Krishna has brought me here. But it's not that Prabhupada knew specifically, I'll go here and here, some people will become devotees and there this will happen, that will happen. It was uncertain. So it was the whole time of struggle that Prabhupada had gone through. It's like when gold is put in fire, everything that is impure melts away and only the gold remains. So Prabhupada had been put through that fire for so many years, so many decades practically, trying various things without anything really working in a visible, impactful way. And yet Prabhupada was continuing on with determination. And the result would manifest in a stunning way in the last 11, 12 years of his life. That we'll discuss in the next part. But I'll focus over here on the 3 points that I discussed. We started by talking about, we can look at the Acharya's life from a timeless perspective or a timely perspective. Timely perspective means what? That we understand that the Acharya is serving Krishna in this world. And Krishna is reciprocating with the Acharya in this world. So we understand the world situation and we understand what the challenges the Acharya went through. So in that connection, we discussed 1896 and 1922, that whole phase. That how during that time, India was in a state of, because of this renaissance, India was in a state of great ferment. So culturally, while there was some level of piety, but also there was a certain level of criticality because of the Western rational education, because of Christian evangelization. Politically, there was the struggle for independence that was going on. And while that struggle is important in its own way, but what Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur told him is that rather than waiting for a top-down approach, take a bottom-up approach. That who rules, these realities will keep changing. But if people's consciousness rises, then that's what will actually bring about a significant change. And then the pre-1965, especially the 1944 situation we discussed, how Indians at that time were politically obsessed, thinking this political party or this scheme will change things. They were culturally infatuated with the West and economically crippled because of the poverty. So what had happened was, independence was seen as a launching pad for spiritual growth. But after independence, instead of spirituality increasing, actually the spirituality was systematically relegated. And that's why it was because of various reasons, partition and then the assassination of Gandhi, that it became like a anti-majority kind of version of secularism, anti-majority religion. So in that, Prabhupada used a thorn to remove another thorn. That he saw that Indians are infatuated by the West, that is Maya. But I will use that infatuation with the West to get Indians attracted to the spirituality once again. And in that, he faced immense challenges. Getting the sponsorship letter, getting the logistical arrangement, and even without finances, he decided to go to America. And even amid great adversity, what he is seeing is Krishna's mercy in terms of the opportunity to practice bhakti. So we'll see how this opportunity manifests and how Prabhupada taps that opportunity as it opens in our next session. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki. Let us here all pray to Srila Prabhupada, to his memory, that just as at this sacred place, Prabhupada appeared with that tireless vision and vigor to share Krishna Bhakti, by which it has come to all of us, that we may also get a drop of that tireless vision and tireless vigor, by which we can take our heart closer to Krishna through whatever challenges life sends our way, and that we can take others' hearts closer to Krishna.